I will introduce ICS Monitoring SDRN Control software product from TDI, especially focused on assess and control emissions. It is integrated with a TDI spectrum management software, which is ICS Manager. It is driven by ICS Manager plugin. SDRN Control is compatible with most of the measurement equipment on the market. It is connected to the applications through a bus. SDRN Control is running on a specific server, and it has a database where the measured and processed data is stored. It is used in combination with HTZ communications, which will allow us to perform calculations to establish the reference spectrum situation. We start to prepare a file with the reference spectrum situation. For that, we will export some of the assignment based on some conditions. So here the conditions is the frequency. And the assignment shall have a valid license in the region where the measurements are conducted. It is done in ICS Manager, and this is what is shown on the screen. Once we have the assignments, we have some statistics on that. We can export it to HTZ, thanks to the integration between ICS Manager and HTZ. In HTZ, we will perform the calculations of the reference field strengths at the location of the sensors, or in that specific case of the sensor. Calculations are performed. The result is here. We will export this result to CSV, and this result will be used to analyze the measurements and to compare it to the reference situation. So now we can start the monitoring of emissions in that targeted frequency range. So we will create a frequency allotment record. What is important is that ICS Manager supports some predefined frequency plans, and thanks to that, we will use that frequency plan to perform the calculations and especially to analyze it. Here we are defining the date, for instance, of the monitoring emission campaign. We will select a targeted measurement area as well. So here it is a polygon which defines the assignments to be analyzed. And we are preparing and we are starting the measurements now. Here we have the panel of SDRN Control. On the right, we have the sensors. On the left, we have the different kind of parameters to be used, the parameters of the measurements. Now we will be able to start the measurement campaign. We are loading the reference field strengths assigned to one sensor. We are opening SDRN Control client, and we will launch the monitoring emission task. So the data is rendered and it is loading, and we will be able to perform the analysis. On the top of the analysis window, we see the reference signal in blue, which is from HTZ. On the bottom left side, we see measured signal and reference signal, and SDRN Control already made some correspondence and combined both measured and reference signal. And in fact, this left side will allow us to analyze the different kind of discrepancies. If we select one emission on the bottom left, it is shown in red on the top. Thanks to that, we will be able to make a zoom and to analyze the emission as it was measured and compared to the reference signal. So here, for instance, we can see in red the measured emission, and on the low right part, we see the power distribution or the level distribution, meaning the time we have seen a given signal strength. Now we will be able to do a zoom on the measured signal in order to analyze it more in details. Here we have the transmitter mask, which is coming from the reference ICS manager database, and the signal spectrum in red, which is coming from the measurements. Here we have, we see the signal mask from ICS manager. Now we will perform another type of analysis. We are identifying a possible discrepancy between the measurement and the reference. Yes, see here we will have a zoom and we will see that the maximum field strength is over the spectrum mask. We can identify all the ICS manager assignments for that given frequency. In our specific case, there is only one. It was in green on the map. And here it's also possible to search for all the stations within a given distance and a given frequency bandwidth. We are finding, in that case, two transmitters, but in reality, it is the same transmitters having slightly different parameters. We are also able to associate an emission, a measured emission with a station. Here we will do it this way. We do this association, and that way we will know which emission, how it is, what is the station corresponding in ICS manager. Here we will find an example of contravention. We clearly see that the measured signal do not have any corresponding mask. So it is a possible unlicensed transmission. Okay, we will select some measured emissions and we will analyze it compared to the reference. So we have made a zoom. We are selecting several emissions. We have it in red. This is the first pre-analysis. Now we will perform a zoom. We see the different signals here, and we will try to analyze it individually. By the way, by selecting additional emissions, you can see that we have more signals in red in the top. So we select, for instance, one, and we see that based on the distribution of the signal, we see that we have the assignment parameters which are clearly different from the licensed one. We are really different from the reference spectrum mask. And one more time, we are able to associate and to identify the emission in the reference database. We are able to search for that emission in the reference database based on the distance and the bandwidth. We see it in green on the map. For another emission, we will also perform the same kind of analysis. On the right, we see the power level distribution, and we see that probably it is several different signals which are create this emission. Now we're looking for another measured emission on the left. We see it in red on the top. We do a zoom. And if we look to the distribution on the right bottom, we see that we have different levels of signal which have similar distribution. Probably that emission is formed by, in fact, different transmitters. One more time, we will select, for instance, another one. We can make some sorts. We identify two emissions here, which are, for instance, allow us to make a zoom. Here we see that we have one single assignment. This is analyzed thanks to the distributions of the signal on the right, but the assignment parameters are different from the licensed one because the power is higher than the one of the spectrum mask.